after another disappointing performance by the Chicago Bulls in which Billy Donovan has said the team is not living up to their potential, has left many Bulls fans once again asking in the midst of a 3-game losing streak, what exactly is this team? We're going to talk a little bit about that, plus the Billy Donovan challenge to Patrick Williams and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And we're right back. After one win against the Washington Wizards, the Bulls have lost now 3 games in a row. As a matter of fact, other than the Bulls win over the New York Knicks and then turn around and won against the San Antonio Spurs on the next night, the Bulls have lost way more games than they've won. The Bulls have only won 5 games dating back to December 1st, right? And over that time, they've gone on 2 separate losing streaks, and they've lost 2 more games. So the 8 games they've lost in that time period. The Bulls are back to kind of showing the concern that was coming into the season on exactly what and who this team is. Billy Donovan had comments as well as the Bulls not playing up to their potential where he said this: "We're good enough to do that against anybody, so I don't even look at it playing up or playing down. If we don't play to our potential, it really doesn't make a difference who's out there. We have to play to what we tried to establish as our identity for most of the year. And for the most of the year, we've done a pretty good job, but certainly the things have hurt us at times, have been rebounding, which is a factor yesterday, and then also turnovers. That was a problem as well. We've got to be able to do better with some of the things that we have control over." And I agree. You look at the loss last night against the Atlanta Hawks, in which the Bulls had 20 turnovers, right? That's in their control. Some of those are just stupid passes, right? Some of that is in the Chicago Bulls' control, absolutely. And unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls don't do a good job of that. As a matter of fact, when you look at the Bulls' last 5 games, for example, right? And the reason why I'm using the last 5 games is, to be fair, there is at least one win in those last 5 games. The Bulls have a net rating of negative 1.5, which says, all right, well, the Bulls are losing games, but these games are they closer than what people are realizing? Well, keep in mind, the big blowout to the Washington Wizards is a big part of why that net rating isn't lower than what it is. But the Bulls have been 22nd in offensive rating over the last 5 games. Keep in mind, coming into the season, the offense was the thing that was the good thing about the Chicago Bulls. And the Bulls have actually been 13th in defensive rating over that time at 115.3, 13th in the league. That's above the second half of it. Matter of fact, when you go back to the last 10 games, the Bulls actually have the 10th best defensive rating in the last 10 games in the NBA. Last 20 games, keep in mind, we're only 41 games into the season. The Bulls actually have the 14th best defensive rating in the league. The Bulls have been considerably better at defense than what they started off this season with, even though they're still allowing some pretty big games by offensive games by opposing teams. The Bulls also in the last 5 games are 14th in true shooting percentage, 14th in effective field goal percentage, 14th in assist percentage as well. But the Bulls are 20th in turnovers. That's not good. That means they're in the bottom half of the league. We're also in the top half of the league in rebounding. This team, despite being in the top half of the league in some of the key categories, have the 27th best record over the last 5 games. The 27th. And over the last 20, they have the 17th best record. This team is talk about living up to potential. To live up to your potential, you have to have consistency. This Bulls team has not had consistency. So you know what this goes back to? Yes, there are going to be people who blame the coaching staff. They're going to be people who blame the players. But at some point, we got to realize that we were bamboozled by Arturas, Karnisovas, and Mark Eversley. At some point, we got to realize that. The Chicago Bulls, right, had 3 straight years. Well, I'm sorry, before Arturas took over, they had 2 straight years of not making the playoffs. Not making the playoffs. We then, we make a pivot. AK and Eversley come in. We don't make the playoffs that first year. Nobody's really expecting that. That was a pivot year. It's okay. It is what it is. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was 3 straight years of not making the playoffs before AK took over. And then under Billy Donovan, under Arturas Karnisovas, the Chicago Bulls have 1 playoff appearance. And outside that first year that they came in here, the Bulls' record has gotten worse every single year. Every single year. And at some point, you have to look at the person, the chef, the person who's bringing all the ingredients together and what they're doing here. Arturas Karnisovas, up until this point, has shown a lack of vision and a lack of aggression to get you out of the place that you're in. Say what you will about the Garpax era, which, again, I've had videos on this before. Paxson, as a GM, was great. Once he moved over and took over as the president of basketball operations and Gar took over as the GM, that's when things really started going left, but that may be a revisit video for another day. You look at the Chicago Bulls, in which after the second three-peat, the Bulls had 5 straight years of not making the playoffs. 5 straight years of not making the playoffs. At that point after that, there was a shift in the 2024-25 season in which the Chicago Bulls, under Scott Skiles, started going on playoff winning streaks. They went, winning record streaks, whatever. They went to the playoffs 3 straight times. The one time that they missed the playoffs, they fired Scott Skiles in the middle of that season, right? And then after that, the Bulls got lucky. They drafted Derrick Rose, and then we went on a streak of making the playoffs for the next 6 years straight. We then miss it once. We then make the playoffs again. We get eliminated in the first round by the Boston Celtics under Fred Hoiberg, and the rest is history. It's so difficult to do something. At some point, like I said, we got to start having the conversation about, and I know a lot of Bulls fans have already had it, what the hell is Arturas Karnisovas doing with this Bulls team? Because this living in two realms thing, having a foot in each world, has not worked, and it has shown no signs that it's going to work anytime soon. And we can talk all day about how this team either needs to add, they need to go younger, whatever it is. But the fact is that even in this coming into this season and making the roster 3 years younger on average than what it was last year, AK still had his foot in 2 different realms. And his inability to recognize that this team ain't it is going to set this team back. Now, you can get lucky in the draft. We all know that, right? Having a higher draft pick doesn't necessarily guarantee you drafting when you're just a bad drafter. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to draft somebody who's going to help change the ceiling and direction of your team, right? You can draft in the 20s and get lucky and get a player that really helps change the direction of your team. But at the end of the day, like, what are we doing? We still have no direction, no goal, no course. It's just we're sitting there saying that we want to do something, but we're still not even accomplishing the mediocre goals that we have set forth. We just don't. We don't. This team, when you look at the way that the Chicago Bulls play basketball, right? And I said this on last night's stream, this isn't just about the Bulls having talent. This is also about an execution standpoint, right? This Bulls team has no actual execution on simple things in basketball. We don't run very much pick and roll. We don't have off-ball actions very regularly. We don't run off-ball screens. We don't dive we don't do the things that this team's going to do. And unfortunately, at this point, we're headed for the 3rd straight season of the same thing under this Chicago Bulls team. And you could talk all day about recognizing that you're in the middle of mediocre, but at what point are you going to want to change things? Now, the players had a meeting after the game yesterday, which is all great, fine and dandy, right? But what's going to come out of that? Because I tell you what, if you have faith that something's going to change coming out of this, listen, I wish I could be there with you. I'm not going to judge you for having faith in this team and thinking that things can change, because as I've always said, this team does have talent. It's not that we don't have talent. We have talent on this team. Is it utilized the best way all the time? No. Right? But the frustration that's here, I'm glad that the players are starting to feel it. right? I'm glad that we hear that Vooch was vocal in the locker room yesterday, right? Saying that we have to stop the dumb stuff we've been doing. That's a great message from a veteran player. And I wish that I could feel like that Vooch saying that is going to all of a sudden light some fire under the Chicago Bulls. But at some point, you got to ask yourself, why do you keep having to light fires to get somebody to be passionate or a team to be passionate about what their damn job is? And it's starting to get to this thing that until AK truly wakes up, right? This is the same AK that said that this isn't working. We know that this isn't the final roster. We have to figure out how many people on this roster are going to be part of the final roster. And no, I'm not expecting it to all change magically with a snap of your fingers. It's usually a process. But the problem is that it seems like to me, personally, that AK does some stuff and then hopes, all right, bet, we did some things. Let's hope that it shuts everybody up and it's going to be enough while we figure out the next thing we're going to do. And then it leads to large periods of inactivity. That's what it usually leads to. You have a little bit of movement, a little bit of moves, and then a large period of inactivity and nothing to do. Bringing in Jalen Smith instead of Andre Drummond, cool. Trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. Drafting Matas Bucilis, right? Getting Zach LaVine back, letting DeMar DeRozan go, getting 2 second-round picks for DeMar. And Chris Duarte. Yay. Yay. That's what this team is at. And that's what this team is trying to sell us on the things that are really going to be for a franchise that keeps telling us and screaming to us and saying, we are a team that's trying to compete. We understand that this city needs more, that this city needs this city needs that. What? What? Because to me, as of right now, I told you guys, I'm a results-based person, right? In my life, in my actual career, outside of doing this, it's all results-based, right? So that's very much how I look at things, tend to. And sometimes, I admit, sometimes you can miss some things being so focused on just results-based, right? Because it's a process on how you get to the results. And I can admit that, right? I'm not blind to that fact. But the process does matter as well. And I don't mean the process as far as like trust the process. We're not doing no Philadelphia 76ers bull crap over here. But this team is listless, man. This team is nothing. We don't have a leader out on the court. And despite Zach LaVine's recent, 6-game, 30-point stretch, which is great. And the season that Zach LaVine's putting together is great. I want to be clear that I'm not about to shit on the season, but we all knew that Zach LaVine is not a leader. That's part of the reason why they brought in somebody like DeMar DeRozan. Right? We don't have a leader. We just don't. We don't have that guy that's going to bring that team together. That's going to galvanize the team and be like, hey, let's get this shit together. We're going to go out here on the court. This is how Chicago Bulls play basketball. Because that's what the teams that I talked about in the past had. That's what they had an identity. Billy Donovan can keep talking all day about wanting to establish an identity. We've been talking about establishing an identity for the last 5 years, and we still have nothing to show for it in the identity department. The identity of the Bulls are the chameleon, right? And not in a good way. You know what? I take that back. You know what the Bulls are? They're potatoes. The Bulls are potatoes. You know how a potato, it has no inherent flavor. It's just starchy. You add some salt. You add some pepper. If you're getting fancy, you add some chicken broth, some bouillon, and get a little bit of extra flavor in there. Add some gravy. Just do your thing. Chives. If it's a baked potato, get some bacon in that mug. I'm getting hungry now. I want a potato. But, a potato takes on flavor. But a potato by itself, potatoes can be damn good. But a potato by, somebody just put a potato in front of you and told you to bite into it, you'd be like, damn, well, this shit's nasty. A potato can become something. The Bulls right now are a potato, meaning they're just sitting on the table with all the potential in the world, waiting on somebody to elevate it. And we ain't elevating shit. It's not. AK isn't doing it. Billy Donovan isn't doing it. Despite the talent that we have on this roster, they're not doing it. There were literally Bulls fans arguing with me in the comments less than a week ago about how the Bulls were 1 game out of the 5th seed. We're only 1 game back. Over that time now, the Bulls have fallen 4 games behind in the 6th seed, 5.5 games behind in the 5th seed. And like I've been saying, we are closer to the bottom than we are even the middle. The Bulls are 2 games out of being out of the play-in. If it wasn't for the Philadelphia 76ers losing 4 games while the Bulls have lost 3, we wouldn't even be talking about the Bulls being in the play-in right now. And that's what we're talking about. And the fact that when I need everybody to realize my anti-tankers, right, which I understand. But the reason why there are so many Bulls fans talking about the importance of trying to keep this pick is because of the depth in the draft and the fact that we just don't keep the pick if it's not in the top 10. If the draft wasn't this deep, on top of if the Bulls just had their pick outright, most people would just be like, all right, where the season ends, the season ends. Right? We'll get our pick regardless. But that's where things are right now for the Bulls. You look at all the bottom 10 teams in the league right now. The only teams that are on winning streaks are the Pelicans with 2, and the Charlotte Hornets, they've won 1, and the Toronto Raptors have won 2. Every other team is on a losing streak. That's in the bottom 10, including the Chicago Bulls and the San Antonio Spurs. We're just waiting, because if that sleeping beast in Philadelphia ever wakes up, it's going to be ugly for the Chicago Bulls in the standings in the Eastern Conference. And then for the people that have been saying and hoping and wishing that this team was going to eventually do something to move up the standings of the Eastern Conference, you're going to have to wake up and realize it ain't happening. But with that said, Billy Donovan has been doing a lot of talking, right? And he has talked about Patrick Williams, and this is going to have some good things in it and also some things that are going to be triggering. It's a long quote, so we're going to get into it. But Billy Donovan said this. He was asked if he is considered benching Patrick Williams yet. He said this: "My expectations for him, even in my conversations with him, is," and this is going to be kind of a broad statement, "you've got to fill him out there. That's not necessarily scoring. He shot the ball pretty well. You've got to fill him on the glass. You fill him in transition. Fill him with activity with his hands. Fill him at the rim. He's capable of doing that. That's really been the message more than anything else of him getting his body size and physicality into the game. We talk, Patrick and I, but the conversations, he knows. He's got the body, he's got the size, he's got the physicality, but the consistency part, he's got to be there. I think he knows that." Billy Donovan has said that a player who is not even putting up starter level minutes, let's just say there, he's barely putting up role player production. I'm sorry, he's getting starter level minutes. I mean production, stats. That he is not considered benching Patrick Williams. And now, that could be situational, right? That could be because you have an unproven Julian Phillips, you have a rookie in Modest Bucilis, and Torrey Craig is out with injury, right? So right now, theoretically, Patrick Williams offers the best situation and potential for a player to play. But let's look at what Patrick Williams is doing. Patrick Williams has never had great numbers, right? I just want to be clear there. I think we all agree that Patrick Williams has never been the player that the stats have wowed you, right? He's been a career 45% shooter from the field and 40% shooter from three. Patrick Williams so far this season is shooting 38% from the field and 36% from three. He is putting up the worst shooting numbers of his career, worse than his rookie season, and he's in year 5. Year 5, and you're putting up the worst numbers that you've done. And despite what people will say, he's actually taking the most shots in his career. So you're taking the most shots in your career, you're putting up the worst production in your career, and at times, your coach isn't even asking you to put up numbers. He's saying, we got to fill you out there. Meaning, if he's saying we got to fill you, you know what that means? That they're not feeling the presence of Patrick Williams on the basketball court. This is the guy that we drafted 4th overall. This is the guy that AK in a weak draft admittedly looked and said, this is the guy who has the potential to bring what we need. This is the guy to do that. Patrick Williams is not even living up to a role player standard. He's just not. Patrick Williams is not living up to any standard, unfortunately, when it comes down to it. Patrick Williams is doing nothing out there on the court for the Chicago Bulls. Nothing. He's out there getting cardio up. Now, admittedly, Patrick Williams had a solid third quarter in yesterday's game. He just did. Solid third quarter statistically. But overall in the game, we got to stop. At some point, I get it. He was the 4th overall pick. The Bulls just gave him a $90 million deal. All that stuff. But at some point, when a player's not making an impact, you got to be willing to sit their ass down. And yesterday was an important date. Not that the Bulls are going to do anything, but he is now eligible to be traded. Every Chicago Bull is now eligible to be traded. January 15th was the date that the rest of the players in the league become eligible to be traded. right? And I'm not saying that to say that this Bulls team is going to do anything, because I'm telling y'all right now, I don't expect them to do shit. I don't think that this Chicago Bulls team is going to all of a sudden make moves. I told y'all, do not expect trades. Billy Donovan told us yesterday in the emergency video that I did, hey, this team is in the middle, and the only way that they're going to get out the middle is hoping that somebody on this team is going to be one of the reasons why they get out the middle. But then even then, he was non-committal to that. I'm telling y'all now, and I've said this before. I said this early in the season, and people doubted me. People thought, hey, Haize, you're tripping. This team is going to do this. This team has the capability of doing this. The Bulls are right back on pace to win 35 games this season. What was my preseason prediction for this team? I'll let y'all go and figure that out. This team is in the place that is the worst place to be in. Not because they're stuck in purgatory, but because this team is going to have a bottom 10 record in the league. But unfortunately, that bottom 10 record, because they're not as bad, still leaves them susceptible to lose their pick for nothing. And that may be what's going to happen here. I'm just saying, y'all, just keep a lookout, man. This is what it is. This is what it is all I can say. This team is god-awful trash. And it's just going to continue being that. It's going to win some games. It's going to have some games. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chicago Bulls turn around and win the next 2 games adamantly and make us all think, well, damn, maybe they're starting to come out of this slump again, right? They have the possibility of doing that. You look at the next 2 teams that we have up on the docket. The Bulls can beat the Charlotte Hornets, and they better damn well be able to beat the Portland Trail Blazers. But unfortunately, at this point, where we sit right now, we had a 5-game home stretch. We only got 1 game left on that, and we were able to pull out 1 game so far. 1. Hey, we're going to dig in. We'll be here throughout this whole season. Hopefully you guys lock in with us, man. I love you guys, man. Thank you guys for being the best part of this show. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.